So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, and we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet, 61st chapter. Then we find a layer of understanding related with the spring feast, related with the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. So during this time where then governments are adjusting themselves in understanding then the schedule of the Creator, we find then obviously nations understanding what it means transition. However, there is a preset plan from a long time ago where then nations, where they used to do whatever they wanted in the past during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, they no longer can do it. So then let's evaluate why. Firstly, we must establish then a couple of translations of the Holy Instructions. You have then the Greco-Roman translation. It's absolutely a piece of junk. And then from the Israelic lineage, the true instructions, where then you can understand layers of understanding. So when the Messiah was then completing the spring feast, he said not a layer of the instructions would be left undone. So let's try to understand what this means. The 23rd chapter of Leviticus gives us then the understanding of the feasts. So each time of the year we would have then a feast. You have then Shavuot, unleavened bread. You have then the Feast of Tabernacles in English. And then, understandably, when you read Hebrews 10 states very plainly, then the shadow prophetic events of the instructions. When the Greco and the Romans, they read these, they are absolutely ridiculously dumb, because they read from instructions that do not exist. The Greco and the Romans, when they tried to translate the Holy Instructions, they did not have a clue what they were translating. So then let's evaluate the situation then properly. As we understand, the President JFK was murdered. So let's make a quick comparison. The Greco-Roman translation is similar as then the U.S. excuse of the library site from where then the president was murdered from. The Israelic lineage, however, gives you where precisely the murder was in. He was in a manhole and a drain storm sewage system. So then, when you begin to evaluate the stupidity of these library junkie excuse of the government, then you begin to understand how fragile your understanding of the Greco-Roman truly is. You don't understand the layers of understanding of the Holy Instructions, because when you deny the instructions themselves, then you have no structure from Leviticus the 23rd chapter. You understand merely as feasts and such. But then when you deny the instructions, understandably only half of it was completed. Because if you are truly smart, and American smart, you must understand only half of it was completed. But let's say you are ridiculous and stupid. You think because only half of it was completed, then the other half, then it's not counted. And then you read from a junky scripture where you don't have a clue what you are reading. But then you expect another outcome. So as then if you would think of JFK, you would think of the library, and then Oswald was then the person that murdered the president. Not only were a liar, ignorant, and stupid, then you place a blame on a person that was absolutely at no guilt. So if you study properly, you find that the U.S. government murdered the president. What was the reason? Because JFK was a decent guy and he did not want to take down Mr. Castro. Understandably, the Bay of Pigs had failed, and he was newly elected president, and there was a failure in the U.S. government. So then, when you read the Greco-Roman translation, precisely it is comparable with this situation. When a person studies and understands, you then study the evaluation of the murdering of the president, you understand the shot was from the front, and the trajectory was from down and up. Then an American expert found the place. It was in a manhole. So when you read from the Itzaelic lineage, you find the truth of it. It's no more of these junky understanding of library in some sort of a house vote that has nothing to do with it. You are ridiculous. The murder was an U.S. soldier marksman. He was hired precisely to take down the president. This might be shocking for some people, but it's the truth. So then the Itzaelic lineage must have layers of understanding. If you are never then involved with the Itzaelic lineage, then you are as believing that the president was then murdered from the library. But when a person is studied, then confronts you, and you come with this lavished face, oh, he was murdered, then it was a person over there from the library. So study from the Itzaelic lineage gives you then the precision required, so then we can understand the events, shadow prophetic events. But then when you then deny the instructions, then you deny and you reject the instructor. Understandably, only half of it was completed. So then you have to retrieve and then understand. Only half of it completed, so you can't ignore the instructions. If you do, you are stupid. And you as an American must understand only half of it was completed. Otherwise you ended up believing such as JFK being murdered from a library. And it's true. For instance, the Bay of Pigs, it was an absolutely miserable failure. Was it a reason then to murder Mr. Castro? The president was decent. He did not want to do it. So he gave his life for it. Now after 2009, the time of deceit then is gone. We are during the time of the dragon, where China must take over the world's market. When you understand the structure of the instructions, then rather than fighting against it, you are with it. It's not a competition for dominance of the market. It is participation with. So let's understand in Hebrews 7:12. We as Americans, we understand the instructions are yet active. If you reject the instructions, you are stupid. Try to understand you are not an American. Because Americans are not stupid. Only half of it was completed. there is another half must be completed yet. So let's make sure we understand the instructions are valid. This means rejected the Greco-Roman translation for the moment. So the structure of the 23rd chapter of Leviticus, those are then the substance. The shadow prophetic events are related then with a time related with the statue of Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Because we must understand tabernacling and Gentile level. The Greco-Romans, they tend to mix those, and the mixing is gone. The time of the mixing of tabernacling and the world was only for 1,000 years. Daniel said they would be mixed up for a time. So what do we expect then when the Soviet Union returns? Won't be the same as before. It is participation with a given system. And we in America, we don't stand a chance. So let's be wise and understand what it means, the holy instructions and the structure coming from it. Because we are preparing ourselves for the second half of the instructions and the prophets. When China unites itself with the Northern Kingdom, then there is no country that can go against them. But we are not talking about competition, we are talking about compensating for our lack of understanding of it. As we think always competition, it is participation. So when there is a mixing of the set apart and the world, you have competition. We are on the agenda once again. And we don't stand a chance this time. Not this time. But it's not retrieving because of defeat. It is retrieving then for being smart. We are overextending ourselves where then we should retrieve for rebuilding, because the system of the end is already given, so the nations can participate with. And then not only this, but then we must respect the decisions of other countries. If we don't respect what China is doing, then we are going to have trouble. The time of deceit is gone. The time of the Greco-Romans is gone. We must understand there is the other half must be completed, and we are during the time of the restoration of the holy cities. And the Gentile level then must receive the Chinese system. So then the Cold War is back. But it's a situation related with the participation of a system, not competition. For instance, the English translation of the Hebrews 7:12 speaks of change. Greco-Roman translates change of the instructions. We think as a replacement. From the Itzaelic lineage is completion. You must have the first, because the first is the first completion, and the Second completion. We think as a change, as if the instructions were eliminated. How can you understand they were eliminated if only half was completed? It makes you stupid. So you have to make the proper changes yourself so you don't become stupid. Nobody wants to be stupid. So let's try to understand whatsoever this country is trying to do in Central America or Australia, it's not going to work. Because it's not competition, it is participation. The Chinese is not interested in overtaking countries. They never waged the war of invasion. Their system must be implemented worldwide. So establishing a military base in Panama, it's not going to work. And establishing a base in New Zealand won't work. Because we are thinking of competition. The system is inviting for participation. But we were from a time where competition was then the utmost. It's no longer. So then our country must humble itself and understand what's coming. The system must become available. China is joining up with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is returning, must become greater than the past. But it is a socialism section of it, and we are familiar with it. Their style of work is the same as the style of America after the Great War. This time we try to make sensationalism of every situation. We are sensational people. We made the Boston situation over there a novel for how many days already? Because there is nothing going on in our country. But then we tend of, always competing to try to take over somebody else. We can't take over the situation anymore. We must participate with. If we try to block China, we are going against the Creator. And it's never wise going against the Creator. So what are the steps then our government should be taking then? Certainly not establishing military bases. The situation in Australia is abnormal. If there is a problem, a simple conversation with the Australians, they are smart people. Then if there is a requirement for patrols, they can do it. But landing our soldiers over there, it's not very wise. It gives a perception of invasion, of trying to take over, of being nosy. Most nations these days, because of technology, they are educated. So if nations are not requesting our presence, why are we mixing ourselves with those people? Why are we being forceful? So the 11th chapter of Daniel gives us then the proper understanding of the Kingdom of the North Soviet Union rebirthing itself, and the Kingdom of the South Africa birthing itself. Then you find the East. A couple of chapters later in the Apocrypha you understand Bel and the Dragon. Dragon is China. And the system of computerized trade. No more middlemen, direct trade. The Babylonian system always uses middlemen. So liking it or not, China must have its way. Because from the Tzayelic lineage, the Messiah then is saying in Revelation, then the freighters of the earth. He's not speaking of kingdoms anymore. Because from the time he was speaking from Tabernaclin's viewpoint, then the stick of the authority of the Ishmaelites obviously then was restored. And there is no way around it. Comes freighting, you have to have fuel. So the only objective this nation should be spending time on is taxation and freighting. Taxation department and freighting. Combining taxation and freighting at the same time. Why do we don't do what is so obvious? We have this perception of taking over the world and going to somebody else's country and, having soldiers over there when sometimes countries they did not even ask. We must start acknowledging and respecting the Creator's calendar and his schedule. Do we realize a simple download in the computer, then the world can be linked up with China instantly? So let's evaluate our New York exchange. Do we realize the Chinese are so smart that when the advent of the computer came around, they already had the concept of doing investments via computer? Renders the New York exchange at no use. How many years computers are around? If you can put together the simple understanding of purchasing and investment at the same time, then you are retarded. You must understand the New York exchange is outdated. That's a Babylonian system. It's the middleman's playing of junk. The computer can regulate what those people do. So when we retrieve, it's not because we have failed, it's because we are smart. We acknowledge a higher plan. This plan must then be available for every person. and there is a system already given, and we understand what the Creator is saying, and we simply retrieve and do what then the Savior said to do. That's being smart.